The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Captain John Martinez walked forward with steady steps, his black uniform crisp and his shoulders straight, despite the weight of what was coming. Behind him, the human delegation followed in silence. Admiral Lisa Brooks kept her face calm, but her hands were tight fists at her sides. Ambassador Carlos Rivera carried a datapad filled with evidence that no one wanted to hear. Chamber was enormous. 17 different species sat in curved rows that rose toward the domed ceiling. Each alien race had their own section with special chairs and breathing equipment. The Zephyrians floated in tanks of green gas. The Caltheran representatives sat on heated stone slabs. The Altarians needed no special equipment since they looked almost human, except for their silver skin and large black eyes. John had been in this chamber many times before. Usually he came to report on human activities or to request permission for new colonies. Today was different. Today he was here to face judgment. The Altarian Prime Minister stood up from the center seat. His voice carried through translators to every being in the hall. Captain Martinez of the Terran Federation, you and your species stand accused of crimes against galactic peace. The formal charges were read by a Zephyrian prosecutor, whose words bubbled through the translation system. Humanity has violated the peaceful expansion protocols 17 times in the past year. Human forces destroyed 3 Caltheran research stations without provocation. Human colonies have been established on worlds claimed by other species. Most serious of all, humanity has shown a pattern of aggressive behavior that threatens the stability of civilized space. John wanted to speak, but knew he had to wait. The rules of the council were clear and ancient. First came the charges, then the evidence, then the defense, then the judgment. He looked up at Admiral Brooks in the observation gallery. Her gray hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes were hard as steel. She had fought in every major human conflict for the past 20 years. She knew what was really happening out there in the dark between the stars. The evidence came next. Holographic displays showed the destroyed Caltheran stations. What the Council did not show was the human colony ships that the Caltherans had attacked first. They did not show the human families killed when the research stations turned out to be military bases. They did not show the weapons pointed at human worlds. Ambassador Rivera stepped forward when his time came. He was a small man with kind eyes and gray at his temples. He had spent 15 years trying to build peace between humans and other species. His voice was steady as he presented the human side of the story. Honored representatives, humanity, came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge. We have followed council laws and paid council taxes. When the Caltheran hegemony attacked our colonies, we defended ourselves. When they built military bases disguised as research stations, we removed the threat to our people. Everything we did was in self-defense. The Caltheran representative rose to object. He was tall and thin with skin like dark leather and 4 arms that moved as he spoke. The humans lie as always. Our research stations were peaceful. The human colonies were built on worlds that belonged to us by ancient right. They are a violent species that cannot be trusted. Other representatives joined in. The Regelians spoke of human trading ships that refused to follow their customs. The Tau-Cetians complained about human miners taking resources from asteroid belts they claimed. One after another, the alien voices rose in complaint about humanity. Dr. Patricia Hayes sat in the back of the human section. She was the Federation's best expert on alien cultures and had spent years studying council records. While the accusations flew back and forth, she worked quietly on her datapad. Something was wrong with this trial. Too many of the alien complaints were suspiciously similar. Too many of the incidents had happened in the same region of space. The council deliberation lasted 3 hours. John and his team waited in a small room while 17 species decided their fate. Through the window, he could see the capital, city of Kepler Prime, stretching to the horizon. Millions of aliens from dozens of worlds lived and worked together in apparent harmony. Humans had wanted to be part of this community for so long. When they were called back to the chamber, John knew the decision before anyone spoke. The Altarian Prime Minister's expression was cold and final. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity has proven itself too dangerous and unpredictable to remain in civilized space. You have 30 standard days to withdraw all human presence from the 17 worlds you have settled beyond your home system. Any human found in Council space after this deadline will be considered an act of war. The words hit like physical blows. 17 worlds. Over 3 million human colonists. Farms and cities and schools and hospitals, all built with hope for the future. All of it had to be abandoned. You cannot do this, Ambassador Rivera said, his diplomatic calm finally breaking. Those are our homes. Our people have lived there for generations. The decision is final, the Prime Minister replied. Humanity is banished from Council space. You will return to your single world and remain there. Any attempt to expand beyond your solar system will be met with force. As the session ended and aliens began filing out of the chamber, Dr. Hayes made her discovery. Hidden in the Council's own archives, buried in routine survey data, she found something incredible. Beyond the Council's borders lay vast regions of space that had never been explored. The established powers had deliberately avoided these areas for thousands of years, claiming they were too dangerous or too far away. But Patricia could read the real data. The dark sectors beyond the galactic rim were rich with habitable worlds and valuable resources. More importantly, they were completely empty of Council influence. Ancient warnings in the archives spoke of mysterious dangers in those regions. But the data was millions of years old. As the human delegation prepared to leave Kepler Prime in disgrace, Patricia shared her discovery with Admiral Brooks and Captain Martinez. The three of them stood in the shuttle bay looking out at the stars. They think they have ended humanity's expansion into space, Brooks said quietly. They have no idea what they have really done. John nodded as he looked toward the dark regions beyond the galactic rim. If they want us gone from their civilized space, then we will find our own space. We will build our own civilization. The shuttle lifted off from Kepler Prime, carrying the news that would change everything. Humanity was no longer welcome among the established powers of the galaxy. But the galaxy was far larger than the Galactic Council imagined, and humans had never been good at accepting limitations. In 30 days, the greatest migration in human history would begin. 6 months had passed since the banishment, and the largest fleet in human history stretched across the void like a river of lights. General Robert Chun stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty, watching the 300 ships that carried humanity's future. The massive colony ship had once been used for deep space mining, but engineers had worked day and night to convert it into a vessel capable of carrying 500,000 people to the unknown. The fleet was impressive, but also desperate. Mining ships carried families in cargo holds. Military vessels had been stripped of weapons to make room for supplies. Even old research ships carried refugees toward their uncertain destination. Every ship was packed beyond safe limits, but there had been no choice. The Galactic Council had given them 30 days to leave 17 worlds, and somehow they had managed it. Engineer Kate Sullivan had not slept properly in weeks. She moved between ships in a small shuttle, checking navigation systems and making sure the modifications would hold together for the long journey ahead. The fleet's destination was a star cluster beyond the galactic rim, identified by Dr. Hayes as potentially habitable but completely unmapped. Kate had to make sure every ship could follow, the same course through space that no human had ever traveled. Navigator. Alex Johnson worked from a small room filled with star charts and computer displays. The route he had plotted would take them through dangerous nebulae and past asteroid fields that could tear a ship apart. Worse, they had to avoid the patrol routes of Council forces who might decide to finish what they had started. Alex checked and rechecked his calculations, knowing that one mistake could doom millions of people. The first major crisis came when they reached the Horsehead Nebula. Captain Nicole Davis commanded the escort destroyer UES Defiance when long-range sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. A massive gravity anomaly lay directly in their path, something that could pull the entire fleet apart before they even knew what was happening. General Chun, this is Captain Davis, she reported over the communication system. We have a problem. There's some kind of gravity well ahead that wasn't on any of our charts. It's big enough to affect the whole fleet. Robert Chun studied the sensor data from the Liberty's bridge. The anomaly was unlike anything in human records. It seemed to bend space itself, creating dangerous currents that could send ships spinning out of control. The fleet could go around it, but that would add months to their journey and use fuel they could not spare. All ships, this is General Chun. We're going to punch through this thing. Engineering teams, I need you to modify our junk drives to create a stable corridor. We go through together or not at all. The solution came from an unexpected source. Kate Sullivan was working on the modifications when a message came from one of the smaller ships in the fleet. A group of civilian scientists had been studying the anomaly and thought they understood what it was. Dr. Samuel Park, the fleet's chief medical officer, had worked with theoretical physics before becoming a doctor. The anomaly isn't natural, he reported to the command staff. It's artificial, probably very old. Someone built this thing, and if we can figure out how it works, we might be able to use it instead of fighting it. The next 12 hours were the most dangerous of the entire journey. Ships throughout the fleet worked together to create a network of modified junk drives. The plan was to use the anomaly's own energy to push the fleet through safely, but it required perfect timing from every vessel. Kate Sullivan coordinated the effort from her shuttle, flying between ships to make final adjustments. Alex Johnson calculated the exact moment when all ships had to activate their drives. Captain Davis positioned the military escorts to help any vessels that got into trouble. When the moment came, 300 ships fired their modified drives at exactly the same second. Space around the fleet shimmered and twisted as artificial energy fields interacted with the ancient anomaly. For a terrifying moment, it seemed like the plan had failed. Several ships began spinning out of control, and alarms sounded throughout the fleet. Then something beautiful happened. The anomaly's energy field stabilized around the human ships like a protective bubble. Instead of being torn apart, the entire fleet was gently pushed through the dangerous region at incredible speed. In minutes, they had crossed a distance that should have taken days. As the fleet emerged on the far side of the nebula, they discovered they were not alone. Long-range sensors detected other ships nearby, vessels that were clearly not human, but also not from any council species. The unknown ships approached slowly, broadcasting peaceful intentions in several different languages. The first contact came when a sleek silver vessel docked with the Liberty. The beings who came aboard were called Rigelians, and they looked somewhat like humans, except for their pale blue skin and large eyes. Their leader was Commander Zara Vex, and she had an amazing story to tell. We are refugees like you, she explained to General Chun through a translation device. Our people questioned the Council's methods and were branded as dissidents. We have been hiding in the outer regions for years, waiting for others who might understand that the Council is not what it claims to be. The Rigelian ships carried only a few thousand people, But they had something more valuable than numbers. They had knowledge of the regions beyond Council space. Commander Vex showed human leaders star charts of the areas they were heading toward, including warnings about dangerous phenomena and notes about potentially habitable worlds. There are others out here, she told them. Species that were conquered by the Council long ago and scattered to the edges of the galaxy. Refugees from wars that the Council started and then forgot about. Pirates and traders who never accepted. Council authority. If you are building something new, you will not be building it alone. As the combined fleet continued toward their destination, other groups joined them. A small collection of merchant ships crewed by beings from a dozen different species. A military squadron from a world that had been destroyed by Council forces decades earlier. Each group brought their own skills and knowledge, but all of them shared the same goal of escaping Council control. The journey also brought internal challenges. Mayor Frank Thompson had been elected to represent the 2 million civilians aboard the colony ships, and he faced problems that no mayor had ever dealt with before. Food was carefully rationed, but there was not enough. Families were separated across different ships with no way to visit each other. Children had been born during the journey who had never set foot on solid ground. Dr. Park dealt with medical emergencies that ranged from simple injuries to radiation sickness caused by the hasty evacuation from the 17 worlds. His medical staff worked around the clock in converted cargo bays that served as hospitals. Every day brought new challenges as people struggled to survive in the cramped conditions of the refugee fleet. But there were also moments of hope and discovery. When they finally reached the edge of explored space, long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. The star cluster that was their destination was not empty. Scattered throughout the region were artificial structures of clearly alien origin, built by some unknown civilization and apparently abandoned long ago. The structures were massive, larger than anything the Council had ever built. Some appeared to be space stations or shipyards. Others looked like they might be gateways or transportation devices. All of them were old beyond imagination, but sensors indicated that many were still functional. As the refugee fleet approached their new home, General Chun made an announcement that was broadcast to every ship. We came out here as exiles and outcasts. We are arriving as explorers and pioneers. Whatever built these structures left them for us to find. We are going to learn their secrets and build something greater than the Council ever imagined. 2 years had passed since the refugee fleet reached the star cluster, and the world they named New Terra was no longer empty. Colony Administrator Rachel Martinez stood on the balcony of the government building in New Washington, watching as construction crews worked on the growing city below. The settlement had started as temporary shelters for 2 million desperate people, but it was becoming something much more impressive. The planet itself had been a challenge from the first day. New Terra was beautiful, but dangerous, with plants that could cut through metal and weather patterns that changed without warning. Rachel had to organize the colonists to work together in ways they never had before. Farmers learned to grow crops in soil that was rich, but contained minerals that could poison earth plants. Engineers built structures that could survive storms that appeared from nowhere and lasted for days. The most exciting discovery had come from Commander Steve Parker and his exploration team. The ancient ruins scattered across New Terra and the other worlds in the cluster were not just old buildings. They contained technology that was far beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. Steve led a team of scientists and soldiers who spent their days crawling through alien structures that were millions of years old, but still partially functional. Dr. Monica Lee was the team's archaeologist, and she had made the first breakthrough in understanding the ruins. The beings who built them called themselves the architects, and they had created a civilization that spanned thousands of worlds. More importantly, They had faced the same problem that humans now faced. They had been forced to leave their original home and build a new empire in the dark regions beyond civilized space. Professor William Chung worked with alien technology that seemed to operate on principles that human science was only beginning to understand. The architects had built machines that could manipulate matter at the atomic level and computers that could process information faster than anything humans had ever imagined. But the most amazing discovery was still to come. Captain Linda Foster commanded the UES Pioneer, humanity's first starship built entirely in their new home system. The ship was smaller than the old colony vessels, but far more advanced, incorporating human engineering with adapted architect technology. Linda and her crew had been exploring the outer worlds of the cluster when they made a discovery that would change everything. Ruins on the fourth planet contained something that looked like a transportation device. Chief Engineer Danny Rodriguez had been studying similar structures on other worlds, and he realized they were all connected. The architects had built a network of gates that could move ships instantly across thousands of light years. The network covered not just their cluster, but extended far beyond into regions of space that no one had ever explored. If we can figure out how to activate these gates, Danny reported to the colonial government, we could travel farther in a day than the Council has explored in centuries. The architects built an empire that makes the Council look tiny. The growing human colonies faced their first real test when scouts detected ships approaching the outer edge of their space. The vessels were Caltheran, the same species that had helped engineer humanity's banishment from the Council. But these ships were not flying Council flags, and their intentions were clearly hostile. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos commanded the defense of New Ceres, a mining colony that was closest to the approaching enemy ships. She had only a handful of Marines and some converted mining equipment, but Maria had learned to be creative during the long years of exile. When the Caltheran attack force arrived expecting to find defenseless refugees, they discovered something very different. The battle for New Ceres lasted 6 hours and became a legend throughout human space. Maria's defenders used industrial mining lasers as weapons and explosive charges meant for asteroid mining as artillery. They turned the mining tunnels into defensive positions and used the colony's own machinery against the attackers. When the smoke cleared, 3 Caltheran warships had been destroyed, and the rest had retreated in confusion. Dr. Hayes had been promoted to head of the Colonial Science Division, and she was making discoveries that explained much about their situation. The architect records contained detailed information about galactic history going back millions of years. The Galactic Council was not the first civilization to control the inner regions of the galaxy, and it would not be the last. The architects faced the same exile we did, Patricia explained to the colonial leadership. They were driven out by an earlier version of the Council and forced to build their empire in these outer regions. But they discovered something that their enemies never understood. The dark sectors of the galaxy contain more resources and more habitable worlds than all of Council space combined. The architect records also contained warnings about something else. The ancient civilization had faced a threat that went beyond political exile or territorial disputes. Something had driven them to build their vast empire, not for conquest, but for survival. The records spoke of automated war machines that appeared from the void between galaxies. Destroying all intelligent life, they encountered political tensions within the human colonies were growing as different groups debated what kind of society they should build. Senator Helen Garcia represented the colonists who wanted to focus on peaceful development and scientific research. They believed humanity should learn from their mistakes and build a better civilization based on cooperation and understanding. General Chung led the faction that believed humanity needed to become strong enough to defend itself. and eventually reclaim their place in the galaxy. He argued that the Council would never leave them alone, and that other threats would eventually find them in their new home. The military had to be prepared for Wargot. The debate came to a head when news arrived that changed everything. Captain Foster's exploration missions had made contact with other human groups scattered throughout the outer regions. Some were descendants of colonies that had been abandoned during the Council Wars decades earlier. Others were refugees from more recent conflicts who had fled Council space independently. The largest group was the Tau Ceti Republic, a collection of human worlds that had broken away from the Council's authority years before the main exile. They had built their own small civilization in a nearby star cluster, but they were under constant pressure from Council forces and hostile alien species. "We have a choice to make," General Chun told the Colonial Assembly. "We can remain isolated and hope that our enemies leave us alone, or we can reach out to other human groups and build something strong enough to protect us all." Senator Garcia opposed the idea of expansion, arguing that it would only lead to more conflict. "We came here to escape war, not to start new ones. If we begin conquering other worlds and absorbing other human groups, we will become exactly what the Council accused us of being." The decision was made when a desperate message arrived from the Tau Ceti Republic. Unknown raiders had attacked their outer colonies, using weapons and tactics that no one recognized. Entire worlds had gone silent, and refugee ships were fleeing toward human space, carrying stories of unstoppable enemies. Rachel Martinez cast the deciding vote in the Colonial Assembly. "We cannot abandon other humans to face threats alone. If there are enemies out there that can destroy entire civilizations, then we need to be united when they come for us." The vote authorized General Chun to contact the Tau Ceti Republic and other human groups about forming a defensive alliance. It also approved the expansion of the colonial fleet to include proper military vessels built with architect technology. Most importantly, it established the principle that would guide human policy for years to come. No human world would stand alone against the darkness dot as the third year of exile began. Humanity was no longer a collection of desperate refugees. They had become the foundation of something new and potentially powerful. The ancient architect technology was giving them capabilities that even the Council could not match, and they were no longer alone in the outer darkness. But the warnings in the architect records suggested that greater challenges were coming. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, ancient enemies were stirring. The same forces that had driven the architects to extinction were still out there, and they would eventually turn their attention to the growing human empire. The question was whether humanity could become strong enough to face that threat before it was too late. 5 years had passed since the Great Exodus, and John Martinez no longer wore the uniform of a Federation captain. He stood in the throne room of the Imperial Palace on New Terra, dressed in the ceremonial robes of an emperor. The transformation from desperate refugee to ruler of 47 worlds had happened faster than anyone could have imagined. But the galaxy was changing in ways that demanded strong leadership. The human empire now controlled 3 major star systems connected by the restored Architect Gate network. Over 8 million humans lived on worlds that had been empty wilderness just years before. The capital city of New Washington had grown into a massive metropolis with towering buildings and bustling streets where humans worked alongside their alien allies. Admiral Lisa Brooks commanded the Imperial Navy from her flagship, the UES Retribution. The massive dreadnought was the first warship designed entirely with architect technology, and it was more powerful than anything in Galactic Council space. The ship's energy shields could deflect weapons that would destroy ordinary vessels, and its main guns could crack the hull of a battleship with a single shot. The Imperial fleet consisted of over 200 warships, from massive dreadnoughts to fast scout vessels that could travel through the gate network in minutes. Each ship incorporated the best of human engineering with alien technology that was millions of years ahead of anything the Council possessed. The fleet was growing every month as new shipyards came online and more resources were discovered in the outer regions. Dr. Patricia Hayes led the Great Survey, a massive scientific expedition that was mapping the hundreds of worlds accessible through the Architect Gate network. Her teams had discovered that the dark sectors contained everything a growing civilization could need. Worlds rich in rare metals, gas giants perfect for fuel extraction, and habitable planets that could support billions of people. But the survey teams also found disturbing evidence of the threat that had destroyed the architects. On distant worlds, beyond the edge of the galaxy, they discovered the remains of ancient battlefields. Massive craters marked places where entire cities had been vaporized by weapons of unimaginable power. Most disturbing of all were the automated war machines found buried in the ruins. Still functional after millions of years, the Empire's expansion brought them into contact with other refugee civilizations that had been hiding in the outer darkness. The Rigelian dissidents who had joined the original Exodus now served as governors of their own worlds within the Empire. Their knowledge of alien technology and their diplomatic skills had proven invaluable in negotiating with other species. Tau Ceti Republic had officially joined the Empire after a series of devastating attacks by unknown raiders left their outer colonies in ruins. Captain Nicole Davis had led the relief mission that evacuated the survivors, and she had seen firsthand the weapons that the mysterious enemies possessed. Entire cities had been reduced to glass, and the few survivors spoke of machines that moved like living creatures but showed no mercy. The integration of the Tau Ceti worlds doubled the Empire's population and added experienced military units to the Imperial Navy. Their leader, Admiral Janet Morgan, became one of Emperor Martinez's most trusted advisors. She brought knowledge of the Council's military capabilities and intelligence about their current activities in the inner regions of the galaxy. Emperor Martinez faced his greatest internal challenge when Colonel Troy Wells attempted to overthrow the imperial government. Wells commanded a significant portion of the colonial marines and had support from civilians who believed the Empire was becoming too militaristic. He argued that humanity should return to democratic principles instead of embracing imperial rule. "We fled from tyranny only to create our own," Wells declared during a broadcast that reached every world in the Empire. John Martins was elected as a colony administrator, not as an emperor. The people should have the right to choose their own leaders. The rebellion lasted 3 months and nearly tore the Empire apart. Wells controlled several outer worlds and had the support of about a quarter of the military. The conflict might have destroyed everything humans had built if not for the arrival of refugees from another failed Council world. The survivors from Kepler-7 brought news that changed the political situation completely. The Galactic Council was facing internal collapse as member species began questioning the authority of the Altarian leadership. Several worlds had attempted to leave the Council, only to be invaded by Council forces. The survivors had witnessed the complete destruction of their homeworld when they tried to declare independence. Colonel Wells surrendered when he realized that the Empire was not just about human ambition, but about survival. The Council was not content to leave humanity alone in exile, and other threats were moving in the darkness beyond the galaxy. The Empire needed strong leadership to face the challenges ahead. Trade relationships developed between the human empire and independent worlds throughout the galaxy. Captain Kate Sullivan, now head of the Imperial Trade Commission, negotiated agreements that brought crucial resources to the growing empire while spreading human influence. Human technology enhanced with architect discoveries was highly valued by species that had never seen anything like it. The Empire's reputation grew when news spread of their victory over the Caltheran raiders. Other species began sending representatives to New Terra, seeking alliance or protection from various threats. The humans who had been cast out as too dangerous were now seen as potential protectors by civilizations facing their own extinction. The most significant moment came when a Galactic Council patrol encountered an Imperial Navy squadron near the Vega system. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the human ships when 3 Council cruisers demanded that they withdraw to their designated exile zone. The Council ships expected to find desperate refugees, but instead faced warships that were clearly superior to anything in their fleet. Admiral Vex 9 of the Altarian Navy transmitted directly to Rodriguez. By order of the Galactic Council, you will withdraw immediately to your authorized territory. Humanity remains under exile and has no right to operate in this region. Rodriguez's response became famous throughout both human and Council space. Admiral, you are the one who needs to withdraw. This system is now under the protection of the human empire. Your Council exiled us from your space, but this is our space now. The standoff lasted 6 hours before the Council ships retreated. Long-range sensors had detected the approach of additional Imperial vessels, including ships that registered power levels far beyond anything the Council possessed. For the first time since the exile, Council forces had been forced to back down. By human military strength, the encounter sent shockwaves through Council space. Intelligence reports reached the Council leadership describing human technology that seemed impossible and military capabilities that threatened the balance of power in the galaxy. Emergency sessions were called to discuss the human problem. That was clearly not solved by exile. Emperor Martinez used the victory to strengthen the Empire's position with potential allies. Independent worlds that had been considering joining the Empire were impressed by the display of human strength. Several minor species that had been oppressed by Council policies sent secret envoys to discuss possible alliance. But the Emperor also knew that the encounter marked the beginning of a new phase in human Council relations. The exile period was effectively over, replaced by a Cold War between 2 competing powers. The Council would not accept the existence of a human empire, and humanity would not return to the cage they had been offered. As the 5th year of exile ended, humanity controlled territory larger than the Council's core systems. Their technology was advancing rapidly through the study of architect devices, and their military was growing stronger every month. The refugees who had fled in desperation had become the founders of a new galactic power, but the warnings in the architect records suggested that both the Empire and the Council would soon face a threat that made their conflicts seem trivial. Something was stirring in the void between galaxies, and the ancient enemy that had destroyed the architects was beginning to wake from its long sleep. 10 years had passed since the banishment, and the human empire now stretched across 112 worlds connected by the ancient gate network. Emperor John Martinez ruled from the crystal spires of New Terra's capital, supported by admirals and governors who had transformed human civilization into something the galaxy had never seen before. The Empire's territory extended across 3 spiral arms, and its influence reached even further through trade agreements and defensive pacts. The Galactic Council could no longer pretend that humanity was a minor problem that would solve itself. Ambassador Carlos Rivera, now serving as the Empire's foreign minister, received an official delegation in the Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace. The Altarian Prime Minister, who had originally pronounced humanity's exile, now stood before the human emperor as a supplicant seeking favor. "Your Imperial Majesty," the Prime Minister began, his silver skin pale with obvious discomfort, "the Galactic Council extends an offer of reconciliation. We are prepared to lift the exile and grant humanity full membership in the Council if you agree to limit your expansion and accept Council oversight of your military forces." Emperor Martinez listened from his throne, flanked by Admiral Brooks and General Chun. The human leaders showed no emotion as the Altarian continued with terms that would have been generous 10 years earlier, but now seemed insulting. The Council wanted humanity to give up half their territory, dismantle most of their fleet, and submit to inspections by the same beings who had cast them out. The Emperor's response echoed through the hall and was broadcast across the galaxy. Prime Minister, 10 years ago, your council judged us too dangerous for civilized space. You were right, but not in the way you intended. We are dangerous to tyranny, dangerous to oppression, and dangerous to those who would deny others their right to exist among the stars. The human empire will continue its expansion, protect its allies, and pursue its destiny. We no longer seek your approval or fear your threats. The Altarian delegation departed in humiliation, carrying news that would terrify the council leadership. Humanity had become too powerful to control and too confident to intimidate. The species they had tried to exile had become the greatest threat to council authority in galactic history. But larger concerns were about to make the Yasti conflict between humans and the council seem insignificant. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving through the void between galaxies. Dr. Hayes analyzed the data from her research facility on New Terra and recognized the patterns from architect warnings that were millions of years old. They're coming, she reported to the Emperor during an emergency meeting of the Imperial leadership. The same machines that destroyed the architects are returning. Long-range sensors show a fleet of automated warships emerging from intergalactic space. They're heading directly for our galaxy. The purifiers, as the architect records called them, had been dormant for millions of years. They were machines built by some unknown civilization to eliminate all intelligent life from the galaxy. They had succeeded once before, driving the architects to extinction despite their advanced technology and vast empire. Now they were returning to finish the job. Admiral Brooks led the Imperial Navy's first encounter with the purifiers near the frontier world of New Olympus. The human fleet consisted of 50 of their most advanced warships, including the mighty dreadnought U.E.'s Retribution. The enemy fleet was smaller, only 12 ships, but each vessel was larger than anything in human space. The battle lasted 8 hours and nearly ended in complete disaster for the Imperial Navy. The purifier ships absorbed energy weapons that should have vaporized them and adapted to human tactics with frightening speed. Their own weapons fired beams of pure destruction that could slice through the strongest shields and armor. Only the desperate activation of experimental architect defensive systems saved the human fleet from annihilation. These things learn from every attack, Admiral Brooks reported after the surviving ships limped back to base. They analyze our weapons and tactics, then develop countermeasures. Fighting them with conventional methods is suicide. We need to find another way. Dr. Hayes made the crucial discovery in the deepest levels of the architect archives. The ancient civilization's final message had been hidden in quantum encryption that took human computers years to decode. The architects had been preparing for the purifier's return, building not just an empire, but a weapon capable of stopping the machines forever. The architects knew they were going to lose the first war, Patricia explained to the emergency session of Imperial leadership, but they designed their empire to serve as a foundation for their successors. Everything they built, from the gate network to the advanced technology, was meant to give the next civilization the tools needed to defeat the purifiers. The weapon the architects had designed required something that no single species could provide: unity among all intelligent life in the galaxy. The purifiers were programmed to destroy civilizations one by one, but they had a weakness that could only be exploited if every species worked together. The ancient weapon could only be activated by representatives of every major galactic civilization acting in concert. Emperor Martinez faced the greatest decision in human history. To defeat the purifiers, humanity would have to reach out to every species in the galaxy, including the Galactic Council, that had exiled them. They would have to share their technology and coordinate their defenses with the same beings who had branded them as too dangerous for civilized space as purifier fleets. Advanced toward both human and council space, destroying everything in their path, the Emperor made his choice. He sent envoys to every world and species in the galaxy, offering alliance against the common threat. The message was simple: unite or face extinction together. The response was mixed at first. Some species welcomed human leadership, having seen the Empire's military strength and technological advancement. Others, particularly council members, resisted the idea of cooperating with the beings they had exiled. But as reports came in of entire star systems being sterilized by purifier fleets, resistance crumbled. The Great Alliance took shape over months of desperate negotiations. Human technology was shared with former enemies, and council resources were made available to the Imperial war effort. Admiral Brooks found herself commanding fleets that included Altarian cruisers, Caltheran battleships, and vessels from dozens of other species. The final battle took place at the galactic core, where the architects had hidden their ultimate weapon. The combined fleet was the largest in galactic history, with over 10,000 ships from every civilized species. Humans fought alongside the beings who had banished them, united by the knowledge that failure meant extinction for all. The weapon required precise coordination from every fleet in the Alliance. Human gate technology allowed instant communication across the battlefield, while architect systems provided the computational power needed to target the purifier command ships. The battle raged for days as the Allied fleets held the line while the ancient weapon charged to full power. When the weapon finally fired, it sent a pulse of energy through hyperspace that reached every purifier ship simultaneously. The pulse carried a virus designed by the architects to shut down the machine's adaptive programming. For the first time in millions of years, the purifiers were vulnerable to conventional attack. The combined fleet destroyed the enemy in a matter of hours. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were reduced to debris by weapons they could no longer counter. The threat that had haunted the galaxy for millions of years was finally ended. In the aftermath of victory, the galaxy faced a new reality. The human empire had led the alliance that saved civilization, and their leadership could not be denied. The species that had been cast out as too dangerous had become the guardians of galactic peace. Emperor Martinez stood before the reformed Galactic Assembly, where every species now had an equal voice. The old council had been dissolved, replaced by a new government based on cooperation rather than domination. Humanity had not sought to rule the galaxy, but they had earned the right to help guide its future. The exile was over, but humanity had gained something far greater than acceptance. They had proven that sometimes the outcasts and rebels are exactly what the galaxy needs to survive.